As many of you know, this entire channel is a one-man operation. I do the research, I do the writing, I do the filming, editing the videos, uploading the videos, creating the thumbnails for the videos, responding to comments. I do it all on my own. Part of this is because I'm a very particular person, and once I have an idea of how a video should go, I have a really hard time giving it away to someone else to make it a reality. In other words, I'm self-sufficient, and that's the way I've always liked it. But that also makes me wonder, how self-sufficient was the Prophet Muhammad? There's a lot of material that can be found which claims Muhammad to have been illiterate. He delegated the work of the Quran to be completed by several of his followers. Now, since we already know that the Quran and Islam contradict themselves in just about every way, it really shouldn't be a surprise to us when we read hadiths like this one. The angel Jibril, or Gabriel, came to Muhammad in it, the cave of Hira, and asked him to read. The Prophet replied, "I do not know how to read." The Prophet Muhammad then added, "The angel caught me forcefully and pressed me so hard that I could not bear it any more. He then released me again and asked me to read, and I replied, 'I do not know how to read.' Whereupon he caught me again and pressed me a second time till I could not bear it any more. He then released me and asked me again to read, but again I replied, 'I do not know how to read,' or 'what shall I read?'" Compare that hadith with this one. The Prophet wrote the marriage contract with Aisha while she was 6 years old and consummated his marriage with her while she was 9 years old, and she remained with him for 9 years until his death. Yikes. Even Muslim apologists are divided when it comes to the topic of Muhammad's literacy, or lack thereof. Many will say that he was in fact illiterate, while many others will say that he was not. But here's the bottom line. Whether Muhammad was truly illiterate or not doesn't actually matter. What matters is how the Quran was written and who wrote it. Spoilers, it wasn't Muhammad. Over the course of 23 years, Muhammad would divinely receive different surahs and verses as he faced numerous situations over the course of his life. Take An-Nisa verse 24 for example. "Also forbidden are married women, except female captives in your possession. This is Allah's commandment to you." This verse came to Muhammad after he and his men fought in Hunayn. Abu Sa'id al-Khudri reported that at the Battle of Hunayn, Allah's messenger sent an army to Autas and encountered the enemy and fought with them. Having overcome them and taken them captives, the companions of Allah's messenger seemed to refrain from having intercourse with captive women because of their husbands being polytheists. Then Allah, Most High, sent down regarding that, and women already married, except those whom your right hands possess. Muhammad preserved his words by teaching them to others, and in some cases, he had these men write everything down. Narrated Masriq, Abdullah bin Amr mentioned Abdullah bin Mas'ud and said, "I shall ever love that man, for I heard the Prophet saying, 'Take, learn the Quran from these four: Abdullah bin Mas'ud, Salim, Mu'adh, and Ubay bin Ka'b.'" So Muhammad didn't write the Quran himself. Did he at least supervise these trusted companions when they were writing the words of the Quran down themselves? Nope. Narrated Zayd bin Thabit, "I consider it advisable that you, Abu Bakr, should have the Quran collected. I said, 'How dare I do something which Allah's messenger did not do?' Umar said, 'By Allah, it is something beneficial.' Omar kept on pressing me for that till Allah opened my chest for that for which he had opened the chest of Omar. And I had in that matter the same opinion as Omar had. So I started compiling the Quran by collecting it from the leafless stalks of the date palm tree and from the pieces of leather and hides and from the stones and from the chests of men who had memorized the Quran. Notice something here. Not one of these men are any of the four that Muhammad originally instructed his followers to take the Quran from. In addition to this, Abu Bakr, who is not one of the four men that Muhammad appointed, is collecting all sorts of random fragments from the stalks of trees, pieces of leather, and other unknown men who supposedly memorized the Quran. None of these stalks, stones, or strangers were ever given Muhammad's approval. As you can imagine, this led to quite a bit of confusion between early Muslims. Here's an example. The companions of Abdullah bin Mas'ud came to Abu Darda, and before they arrived at his home, he looked for them and found them. Then he asked them, "Who among you can recite the Quran as Abdullah recites it?" They replied, "All of us." He asked, "Who among you knows it by heart?" They pointed at Alqamah. Then he asked Alqamah, "How did you hear Abdullah bin Mas'ud reciting Surah Al-Layl?" Alqamah recited, "By the male and the female." Abu Darda said, "I testify that I heard the Prophet reciting it likewise, but these people want me to recite it as, and by him who created male and female. But by Allah, I will not follow them." In this story, we have a group of Muslims who learned the Quran from Abdullah bin Mas'ud, while another group learned it from a different companion of Muhammad. This became such a severe point of contention that Abu Darda swore in Allah's name that he would not recite Al-Layl in any other way except that of which he heard it. But even some of Muhammad's closest companions turned against one another. Narrated Ibn Abbas, Omar said, "Ubay was the first of us in the recitation of the Quran, yet we leave out some of what he recites." Ubay says, "I have taken it from the mouth of Allah's messenger and will not leave for anything." As you can imagine, this led to a ton of controversy and even political unrest in the early days of Islam. Muhammad's lack of self-sufficiency became such a burden to Islam that Uthman, the third caliph or religious leader of Islam, gave the following orders. Narrated Anas bin Malik, Hudhayfa bin al-Yaman came to Uthman at the time when the people of Sham, who were Syrians, and the people of Iraq were waging war to conquer Armenia and Adharbijan. Hudhayfa was afraid of their differences in the recitation of the Quran. So he said to Uthman, "O chief of believers, save this nation before they differ about the book, the Quran, as the Jews and Christians did before." This guy's funny. So Uthman sent a message to Hafsa saying, "Send us the manuscripts of the Quran so that we may compile the Quranic materials in perfect copies and return the manuscripts to you." Hafsa sent it to Uthman. Uthman then ordered Zaid bin Thabit, Abdullah bin Az-Zubair, Sa'id bin Al-As, and Abdur Rahman bin Harith bin Hisham to rewrite the manuscripts in perfect copies. Uthman said to the three Qurayshi men, "In case you disagree with Zaid bin Thabit on any point in the Quran, then write it in the dialect of Quraysh. The Quran was revealed in this tongue." They did so, and when they had written many copies, Uthman returned the original manuscripts to Hafsa. Uthman sent to every Muslim province one copy of what they had copied and ordered that all the other Quranic materials whether written in fragmentary manuscripts or whole copies, to be burned. In Islam, burning the Quran is considered to be one of the most vile transgressions anyone could ever commit. Unless, of course, you're burning the Quran to cover up Muhammad's poorly executed work. As the saying goes, when you want something done right, do it yourself. This is why I do these videos by myself, because I take a lot of pride in leaving you, my followers, with work that is both edifying and complete. In Muhammad's case, however, he could do nothing right when it came to compiling the Quran, because, well, he didn't even care to do the job at all. He just passed that responsibility off to his followers and let the circus act commence. He was probably too busy thinking about his 70 virgins in paradise. Until next time, salam.